let's go ahead and get into it. The 7 dimensions of wellness. And the reason why I wanted to do this today, because I think we hear a lot about wellness, we hear a lot about self-care, we hear a lot about, filling your cup before you pour from it kind of thing. But this presentation today will break it down into 7 distinct roles, right? And the goal is to make you aware that wellness can wear many hats, right? It can have many faces. So you may be excelling in one area of wellness, right? Where you have not a lot of wants, not a lot of needs, not a lot of things that you want to change, but be completely neglecting in another space or neglectful in another space. So this is really to serve as an inspiration, maybe even just like a grounding or a foundation for you to start exploring, right? Start exploring your world, start exploring the things where you're putting your energy and see where is there's space to grow, right? Where do you need to nurture a little more, right? So that we can achieve that balance, all right? So what is wellness? So there is a therapist who's also an occupational therapist, and her name is Peggy Swarbrick. And her definition of wellness is a conscious, deliberate process that requires being aware of and making choices for a more satisfying lifestyle. Okay, so within this framework, even though there are 7 dimensions, how that manifests in your life is going to be different. It's going to be individual to you. Okay, so there's no one size fits all when it comes to wellness. So I can give you some definite suggestions and some guidelines, but ultimately this is to spark introspection, right? What's working for me? What's not working for me? Where can I add a little? Where can I take a little, right? Where can we find this balance and feel a whole wellness, okay? So wellness is marked not by the absence of illness or stress, because that's kind of impossible, right? But by the presence of elements like purpose in your life, joy in your relationships, satisfaction in work and play. Okay, so that's how it's going to look different, right? What's satisfying to you might not be satisfying to me, and that's okay. And that's the beauty of it, right? It's all about self-exploration, self-expression. So let's talk a little bit about creating balance, right? Which is the whole purpose of defining wellness for yourself and taking steps to cultivate it in your daily life, okay? So creating balance in our lives is very important to wellness. Overall, a balanced life can mean many things depending on your culture, right? Where you grew up in, where you live, the circumstances of your environment, the resources you have, right? And lots of other factors. And balance means making sure that we have the time to do the things that make us feel happy and fulfilled, right? Sometimes people just want to get on that grind and stay on that grind, and they think that's going to produce happiness, okay? And it may for some, but for the majority of the human race, that just leads to burnout, right? So we have to make sure we carve out spaces for that fulfillment, for that happiness, whatever that looks like to us, okay? So that could include working, paid or unpaid, right? Do you feel fulfillment in your role as an employee or even as a caregiver or as a volunteer? Having fun, spending time with family and friends, participating in the community, right? And being physically active, having a strong prayer life or a spiritual practice, right, that you can find fulfillment in, relaxing and sleeping, right, making time for those things, not as rewards for getting your work done, but quintessential elements to maintaining your capacity to succeed and achieve, okay? Because we each have individual needs, preferences, different capabilities, what we consider balance is going to look different, right? So it's important for us to rebalance from time to time, right? Just to get into that space and recalibrate and try to adjust to what's going on in our lives, right? Things come and go, and we can't just stay in the same track our whole lives, right? We have to adjust, we have to recalibrate. And so when we're trying to get through a tough time, so super stressful time, an illness or a trauma, emotional challenges, right? Balance is really important. And in these times, we have habits and routines that help us get to that sense of feeling like we're in control and getting that control back. And so that means focusing on ourselves as well as the roles that we play in our lives and the lives of other people, like students, friends, parents, spouses, that kind of stuff. It's very, very important to know where we are lacking and where we need to kind of bolster some wellness, okay? So that's why we want to create balance. So the first dimension we're going to go to, we're just going to tick them off down the line. Okay, I'm going to give you a description and I'm going to give you some examples of what that may look like or how you may be able to manifest that or bring that into your space. Okay, so emotional wellness is a dimension that involves the ability to express our feelings and adjust to those emotional challenges that you come up with, cope with the stresses in life, even enjoying life, right? And so that could be our strengths as well as what we want to get better at in living and working on our own, but letting others help us from time to time. So how do we improve our emotional wellness? Well, feelings and emotions first. Reflect, right? How am I feeling? Why do I feel this way? What can my emotions teach me? How can I express them in a way that feels true to myself, right? And that's even the ones that we are uncomfortable with, right? Why am I angry? Why am I sorrowful? Why do I feel apathetic? And what is that teaching me, right? It's not just about feeling good all the time. Emotional wellness isn't just about, well, I'm going to be happy and smile all the time, even if I'm dying inside. It's accepting those harder ones as well and integrating them and honoring them in ourselves, okay? So you can find a place where you feel the most comfortable and go there when you need space for comfort, quiet, and safety, right? My bedroom is my retreat. So if I need some time to reflect and just spend time in my own company to get to that emotional balance, I consider my bedroom my sacred space for that. So find a space that you feel comfortable being vulnerable with yourself. Develop regular habits that help you process and deal with your feelings effectively. So, journaling, praying, meditating, stretching, right? Those are all things that you can do to keep you in a space of process for your emotions. And consider using a journal to record your feelings and thoughts, which I just said. Self-care. So, what do you like to do best? Do it often, right? It'll help you keep your spirits and emotions up, right? We are very bad about it in our culture of saying, well, if there's work to be done, there's no rest to be had, right? And so the self-care to improve your emotional wellness is counter to that. And so it can feel very uncomfortable sometimes when you first start, but once you realize that it's improving your output, then you're going to be more likely to go ahead and take time for that every day. Practicing positive self-affirmations, right? So create a positive statement to repeat yourself daily. So when you change your thoughts, you can change your mood and your attitude. Identify resources that can help you with sleep scheduling or ideas for meal planning, because we all know if we're cranky or hungry, our emotions can be incredibly difficult to decipher and respond to the way that we want to, right? So we've all been hangry before, so make sure you're taking care of your physical body because that's going to help with your emotional wellness. And take some time to yourself regularly. Okay, that's a point we try to drive home every training, that you are just as important and that caring for yourself is caring for your loved ones. You're not taking away from them when you pour into yourself. Okay, and it's okay for those time. It's crucial to have that time, right? And then stress. So when you're in a stressful situation, see if you can take a step back, right? Just breathe, just feel what you feel and try to decide, what's my next move, right? Practice finding positives or a silver lining to your scenario. Something that makes you feel negative, see if you can find a positive spin on it. Now, this isn't to swallow down any feelings or to bypass anything, right? They're still very true and authentic, even if they're uncomfortable. But it is good to maintain gratitude, even in those times where it's difficult, right? Practice deep breathing or other relaxation techniques. We mentioned some of those earlier. Or try out different coping exercises or strategies when you're not in a stressful situation, right? And when challenges arise, you'll be better prepared to deal with them. So you don't have to wait until you're on the brink to practice breathing, right? You don't have to wait until you're biting your tongue so hard it's about to fall off to practice positive affirmations, okay? Do these even when you're not in an emergency or stressed out situation and see how it feels. That's going to help you build resilience so that when those stresses do come, you know the actions that you need to take and you're going to feel comfortable in them, okay? So next we're going to move to environmental wellness. So this is one I think a lot of people bypass, they don't think about. I know I did not think about it. But this dimension involves being able to be safe and feel safe, okay? So that can include clean air, food, and water, right? I know that when I'm drinking this water and I'm eating this food, it's going to be good for me, right? preserving the areas where you live, learn, and work, right? Some people thrive in a chaotic environment, right? Where there's stuff everywhere and clutter everywhere and things like that. And that's how, they navigate the world, and that's fine. And some people don't. So just figure out what works for you, right? How do we make this space a place where I can feel safe enough to rest? Okay. Occupying pleasant, stimulating environments that support your well-being, right? That could be going to a botanical garden. That could be going to one of your favorite restaurants with your friend, right? That could be just having a nice, tidy kitchen right before you cook, right? And then promote learning, contemplation, and relaxation in natural places and spaces. So you might not be a nature buff. You might not need to go and do a 15-mile hike in the woods, but maybe you just want to sit outside on your porch and hear the trees, right, in the wind, or maybe just feel the sun on your skin while you're walking from your car into the Publix, right? Just taking time to notice the soothing experience of being in nature, okay? We're all wired for that. You might not like the bugs, but you're still going to like the sun, right? It's still going to be good for you. So how do we improve our mental wellness? Again, green living. So recycle, right? Just know that you're improving something. You're putting energy into making the environment a safe place for everybody involved. Volunteer efforts for cleanup, right? Collecting trash from roadways or parks. That may not be for everybody. I know it's definitely not for me. But my kids really get into that kind of stuff. It makes them feel fulfilled. It makes them feel as if they're contributing to a positive environment for themselves. And that prompts the wellness. Explore green aisles at home improvement stores, energy efficient light bulbs, other things like that, right? Just kind of a way for you to honor the environment that we all share. Change in scenery. So figure out what outdoor activities make you feel good, and then find a few options to make it easy to do that, right? It might not be going out and playing backyard football. It could just be, walking in your front yard with your shoes off. Take a break to walk around the block and enjoy the sunshine, visit parks or hiking trails that are new to you or familiar favorites. And then your home and work environment. So there is a link between clutter in the home and stress, right? We find that if you are, your external environment often reflects your internal environment and vice versa. So if you have a very chaotic and cluttered space, externally, that may indicate that you have a very chaotic and cluttered space internally. And so that could be a trigger for you to know, hey, I need to clear some space. I need to clean this up, right? You can look through magazines or websites like Pinterest, find styles that you like, and try to incorporate that into your space, into your sanctuary, right? Even just a small spot can be really helpful for you, okay? So next is social wellness. And this one can be kind of tricky if you're taking care of a loved one who is immobile, right? Or it's hard to transport them, or it's hard to get away and cultivate social wellness, right? Because they need you there all the time. And so when I go through these suggestions, just keep in mind what works for you. These are not musts, they're just suggestions, right? Just an invitation for you. So the social wellness dimension involves having healthy relationships with friends, family, and the community, and having an interest in and concern for the needs of others and humankind, okay? So you don't have to have a super active social life to develop social wellness, okay? So how do we improve it? Community, right? Ask your doctor, a friend, family member, someone from your congregation, or others about your community, or others in your community about support groups, right? We do this every week. So this can also help improve your social wellness. We also offer a monthly support group on the third Monday of every month. That could be a way if you don't have a lot going on outside of the home and you have to stay home. These Zooms can be really useful in that way. Look online for groups that share your interests. So knitting, softball, scrapbooking, yelling at people. I don't know. There's probably a group for everybody, whatever you're into, right? And then maybe even just pick up the phone and connect with others. I think we lost the art of that when we all started to text, right? And I love to text, don't get me wrong. I think it's great. I'm an introvert, and so I don't really do phone calls. But sometimes that can be a lot more fulfilling for you and improve your social wellness more so than a text, right? Or a Facebook post. Meeting new people. So find out what's going on in your area. See if there's any opportunities to make friends, okay? Sometimes senior centers will have days where you can take your loved one there and they'll entertain them with activities. And then the caregivers and the family members can still congregate and enjoy some time in community with others in a very non-formal or informal setting. Okay, and that can be very helpful. Keep an open mind and exercise your curiosity when you meet new people, right? Don't be so quick to make snap judgments. Let people tell you who they are before you decide that for them. And that can be a great way to meet new people. Or join meetup groups online. There's a lot of them of like local, like what's happening in Huntsville, what's happening in Madison, what's happening in Birmingham, right? And so there could be spaces for you to be invited into meeting more people. And then social time. So keep track of when you need to catch up with someone or when a friend or family member is due for a visit, right? So it's like, oh, well, me and Sheila got together for coffee 3 weeks ago. It'd be nice to kind of touch base and see how she's doing if she wants to meet up again, right? You don't always have to wait for somebody to come calling. You can always pick up the phone as well. And I think sometimes in caregiving situations, other people don't know when you can be available, right? And so they don't want to bother you and be like, well, let me call up George and see if he wants to have dinner because they think, well, maybe George is busy, right? So it may be up to you to breach that and say, hey, I'm free Tuesday afternoon. Would you like to meet, right? Organize a calendar of events that would be good ways to connect or reconnect to friends, or join or start a book club, right? So those are just some suggestions that you can kind of consider as you move forward towards your improving your social wellness. So the next dimension is spiritual wellness. Okay, so spiritual wellness is a broad concept that represents your personal beliefs and your values, and it involves having meaning, purpose, and a sense of balance and peace. Okay, so it doesn't have to be a religion, but it can be. Okay, so really just includes recognizing your search for meaning and purpose in the human existence, right? Developing an appreciation for life and the natural forces that exist in the universe. So that could be coming together in a traditional setting where you are actively improving your spiritual wellness with others. This could be quiet time by yourself in your sacred space, whatever that looks like for you, and just thinking, right? Um, these things are good for us. It's good for our brain to give that space for it to kind of wander and explore and question and be curious. Okay. So how do we improve it? Beliefs. So we can read about other types of beliefs, and this can help us to be more understanding or accepting and open-minded. We can learn about other things and not adopt them into our own lives, right? I can read about other paths or other thoughts and wonder about them, right? And some of them I may integrate into myself, and some of them I may just write off as that's not for me, right? But the act of learning and seeking is good for us. Keep your beliefs and your thoughts to use them in your everyday life, right? A lot of our belief systems, they cultivate core values in us, and that can be great to help act as a framework for flourishing in this way. Share your beliefs, share your values, share your principles with other people as it's appropriate, right? And this is just a way for you to deepen relationships and expand your worldview, right? Like, well, I read this about this specific belief. What do you think? And then they go, oh, yeah, I know a little bit about that, right? And so you can have this back and forth with somebody else, and that can be incredibly satisfying. Next, involvement. Learn about different organizations or groups in your community and decide which ones are the best fit for you. Okay, this is about how you decide what's good for you. Okay, I'm not going to tell you how to do it. I'll just give you a framework to give you inspiration. And then find out about groups offered within your organization and get involved, right? So maybe you reach out and you start going to a church and you realize, well, they've got a food pantry every couple of weeks and they need volunteers, or there's a study on some word, that they want to cultivate a little bit deeper with somebody. So see what's going on. Try to get involved, right? Don't be afraid. Stay curious. And then time. So as often as you possibly can, find a peaceful location to reflect and meditate. Okay, again, this is going to be good for your brain. This isn't just about, well, I feel good because, I sang a hymn at church. Okay, why do you feel that way? Because your brain is wired for it. Okay, it produces a calm in you. Okay, so it's good to take regular breaks to do those things. Learn other religions through books or conversation. and create rituals that mean something to you. So we are meaning making creatures. And when we do ritual, whatever that looks like, whether that's, every morning I wake up and I have a cup of tea and I journal, right? That's a ritual. Every afternoon, or every evening after I get home from work, I exercise, right? Those are rituals. They mean something to you. That can be spiritual wellness. It doesn't have to be liturgy and alms and prayers, right? It can just be simple routines that you do, simple rituals that you do that is investing in your spirituality in some capacity. Okay. And it doesn't have to be dogmatic. It can be as secular as you want it to be. It could be as traditional as you want it to be. It can be as creative as you want it to be, right? It's what feels good to you. Next, financial wellness. So there's going to be a lot of definitions that constitute being financially well. But overall, this dimension involves things like your income and your debt ratio, right? Savings, as well as how do you understand the financial processes and your resources, right? So being satisfied with your current financial situation and future prospects also comes into play. Okay, sometimes we can be so overwhelmed with these things that we neglect them. We neglect to manage them, and in those spaces, they just ultimately spiral out to be worse than what they started. So financial wellness, although uncomfortable in the beginning, can really go a long way in providing you with that space where you're not as stressed all the time. So how do we improve that? Balance your checkbook often, right? Make sure that you don't overextend yourself. I know way back in the day, it seemed like, oh, I've got this amount of money in the bank, and then I would spend it, and then it's like, boom, I got to overdraft because there was some pending charges I didn't pay attention to. And so I thought I had $100 and I really had 7, and then there I go, right? But paying attention to that now, it helps me to kind of, avoid some of that stress because I don't put myself in that position like I used to. Make sure that your savings are in line with your goals. So if you want to take a vacation, make sure you're saving for that. If you want to buy a home, make sure you're saving for that. Retirement, make sure you're saving for that. Easier said than done, right? And especially lately, there doesn't seem to be a lot to put into savings because you need it all now. But just being realistic, I think, is good. Even if it's just a little bit here and there, it can go a long way in your financial wellness because you're at least working towards something, that you're not stagnant. Making sure that you have a weekly or monthly budget and stick to it, right? If you can. Next, debt. So figure out your total debt and make a plan to pay it down in a manageable way. Financial stress is like the #1 cause for divorce in our country. And so it is a huge impact to our well-being when we are not being responsible, right, with our debt. If you need to get help from someone who specializes in money management or personal finances, seek them out. Sometimes you'll get a free consultation from people and they can just kind of give you a general overview of the services they can offer you or changes that you can make. Or you can ask your bank to help you with that kind of stuff, right? A lot of times they have professionals on staff that can help you manage your money better. And then other retirement accounts or savings accounts. A lot of them can be free or low cost services. They help you plan for the future. Sometimes you can just go to the library and they can give you some information on where you can go next. Open a savings account or something like that that works for you, right? Not all accounts are created equal. So make sure you do your due diligence and find the right one for you. And if you're receiving disability benefits, there's a limit on how much you can save without affecting your benefits. So just make sure you're aware. Okay, knowledge is power in all things, but especially when it comes to our finances. And sometimes we can kind of get caught in the undertow of like, oh, I'm in debt, or I don't have the money, and I'm, credit card bills are up to my eyeballs. And it's hard to think in those spaces, but being aware of the reality of it, getting it all laid out in front of you, that can be calming because then I know the shape of the beast I have to slay now, right? I understand its weaknesses and I understand my strengths in it. And so sometimes it's easy to avoid it because we're afraid of what it actually looks like. But oftentimes I find that when we see it and we stare it straight in the face, it's a lot easier to manage because we can break it down because we know what we're dealing with. Next, intellectual wellness. So this one, I think is overlooked as well, right? This dimension is going to be involving a lot of things that keep our brains active and our intellect expanding. Okay. I personally consider myself a lifelong learner. I learn for fun, and it keeps me incredibly curious and sharp, I think. And so I am very passionate about intellectual wellness, and I hope that you guys at least are curious to cultivate that a little bit more in your lives as well. So in a broad sense, this dimension can involve looking at different perspectives of an issue, taking them into consideration through a number of activities, from learning about current events to organizing game nights in your home or community center. And you can broaden your perspective and understanding of diverse points of view, right? If we get too stagnant in this space, we can become very closed-minded and very rigid, and that severs our capacity for flourishing. So how do we improve intellectual wellness? What are your personal interests? How can you be involved in those, right? Maybe you can teach a class or workshop or lead discussion. I have friends who are incredibly skilled at knitting and crochet. And so sharing that skill with other people and helping them learn how to do it and helping them troubleshoot, that's intellectually stimulating for them. And so they take advantage of those moments. Consider being a member at a local public library to gain access to books, book reading, and other events, right? The library is still alive and well. It is still thriving. It is still free. And now you can even do, a lot of libraries offer audible books or audio stories. And, you can just check them out online, right? So you can access that for free. Explore public events in your community. Check out the event section in a newspaper or online or on your Facebook, right? There's always something going on that maybe isn't intellectually based, but it makes you think, right? It makes you see things in a different way. So going to a jazz concert, maybe you're not into jazz, but you go because you're curious, right? And chasing that curiosity fosters intellectual wellness. Next, education. So there's a lot of places that offer classes to the public, colleges that you don't have to be a full-time student or enroll in, but you can still participate. See what kind of skills training, so writing, sign language, blogging, what's available in your area, the public library, your local congregations, colleges, or community organizations, right? There are people out there in nonprofit spaces and education spaces that offer free workshops just because they know it's important that you have the opportunity to stretch your intellect, okay? And then brain exercises. So there's games and apps that you can get on your phone, or even like a Sudoku book or a word search puzzle or something like that, just to keep your mind happy and fluid, right? Reading or listening to audiobooks on topics that are interesting to you. I would even say podcasts, depending on the content. Some of them are pretty toxic and not very fun to listen to at all, but there's a huge world out there in the podcast sphere where people are experts in their field and they can explain things to you in a way that's very easy to understand. All right, next, physical wellness. So I would venture to say that this is the dimension of wellness that we often think of when we think of the word wellness, right? How is my physical health, right? And that's a huge component, right? Because we are bodies, and so we don't maintain our bodies. It can affect our mood and our emotional wellness and all the balance that we're trying to cultivate here. So I don't want to ignore it, but I do want to really drive home that this is one dimension of 7, okay? So it's not going to cure everything, but it is important. So good physical habits, a healthy body, good nutrition, all that, right? Going to see your doctor when you need to, take your medication as prescribed. That's what makes up this physical dimension of wellness. So a few ways that we can get there could be choosing things that make your body feel good, right? And trimming back on things that bring you down, right? Sounds simple, but it does require some intentionality, okay? So we can also feel better by creating a routine that balances activity with inactivity, right? That rest and work balance, right? It can't just be one or the other. Because you might think it'd be great to just sit and rest for the rest of your life, but that is understimulating and it gets boring very quickly, right? And you start to deteriorate in more ways than one. But then to be overtly active all the time and never taking time for breaks, that's going to deteriorate you as well. Okay, so it's about finding that balance. And make sure that it's manageable within your obligations, right? And there's always ways that you can be creative and find space for physical wellness. Our body is intelligent, and learning to listen to it more deeply is very empowering. And I'm speaking from personal experience. Okay, the more we listen to our body, the easier it is to hear it. So, how do we improve our physical wellness? Number one, nutrition, right? Um, this is often a realm, physical wellness, that gets attention for good reason. It can be very difficult to address other aspects of life when we're not feeling our best physically, right? If you're down and you're stressed and you're tired and you're fatigued and all that stuff, um, you're probably not going to hop up and run 5 miles, right? But it is important to move our body, to eat good food, and to minimize harmful habits like smoking, right, or drinking too much. And keeping up with those preventative healthcare measures, right? Get your mammograms, get your heart checked, right? Your blood pressure checked, get your cancer screenings and all that stuff. Okay. Um, Watch what you put in your body, how much activity you get. Make sure you're managing a healthy weight that's comfortable for you. This is how you're going to keep your body working properly. And that's really what it is. A lot of times we think about physical wellness and we think about aesthetically, like, how do I look, right? But there's a lot of non-scale victories in physical wellness. There's an entire internal system and systems that you don't see the effects of that on your scale, right? So you might be at a healthy weight, but feel completely garbage inside, right? You might be at what people consider a not healthy weight, but still feel as if, you're full of life and things like that. So just make sure that you are being careful and mindful with how you treat your body, because you are your body. Okay. Um, so physical activity, nutrition. So check out local food co-ops if there's one in your area for good, affordable food. I know some places that are more rural maybe don't have these, but I know at least here in Madison County in Huntsville, there is Oakwood University, and they have a farmers market where they grow all this food, these fruits and vegetables, and they bring them to offer the community. Some of it's free and some of it's very discounted. So there's spaces like that where you can get some good nutrition, um, even if it's not within your budget. Okay. Um, a balanced diet includes food items from all 5 food groups, right? Um, the 6 essential nutrients of protein, carbs, fats, vitamins, minerals, and water. Okay. So we want to stay balanced in how we're fueling our body by using variety, okay, as the cornerstone. Physical activity. So aerobic activity that doesn't have to be, being 24/7 Richard Simmons or Energizer Bunny all the time, right? But any exercise that gets your heart rate up, right, within a reasonable and healthy level for you and what your doctor has prescribed or advised for you. Okay. So that could be running, swimming, dancing, jumping rope, bike riding. Okay. Um, Gardening even, right? Sometimes gardening can get your heart rate up because it's, you're exerting a lot of energy. But it's important to just find something that you find enjoyment in, right? We don't want this to be a punishment for you, because then you'll start it and then you'll never keep it, right? Muscle strengthening. So anything that allows you to build muscle and strength. So that could be lifting weights, that could be doing squats, that could be crunches, right? Um, that could be just what they call calisthenic exercises. I think that's what they call it, where you're just using your own body weight for a while. Okay. Bone strengthening. This is especially important as we age, right? We don't absorb the calcium and the magnesium and the iron and all those things that we need. And so we have to make sure we are intentional about strengthening our bones with what we eat, but also with exercise. Okay. So running, jump rope, squats, okay, anything that's like weight bearing exercises is going to help strengthen our bones. And then flexibility, so anything that stretches the muscles, right? So Pilates, yoga, um, even something not super structured, right? Just stretching your arms up in the sky for a couple times, and maybe trying to touch, your knees or your toes if you can, right? That's going to improve your flexibility. And of course, all of this I say under the understanding that you are going to consult your doctor first. Okay, I don't want you to say, well, Jenny said to stretch, so I'm gonna go ahead and pull my back out. No, I'm not telling you to do that. Be wise, listen to your body. Okay. And then finally, sleep, right? This can be really difficult, especially for those of you caring for loved ones who tend to wander or experience insomnia or maybe sleeping and breathing issues, right? It can be very difficult for you to be in a space where you feel safe enough to rest because you got to jump up every 25 35 minutes to go and chase down your loved one. It's going to be hard to get sleep in that space, but with grace, with tenderness, and the wisdom, try to incorporate sleep as consistently as you can. Okay. This is the cornerstone to your health, and it's incredibly important, just as important as nutrition and regular exercise. Okay. Good sleep will enhance your mood, right? It'll boost your immune system. It'll sharpen brain functioning. So if you guys got a foggy brain and you can't think straight, maybe you need some sleep and some good nutrition, right? It can actually help you control your weight. They discovered that your brain actually, while you sleep, almost goes through like a cleansing, like a detox kind of thing, like a brain fluid kind of flushes um, your brain and cleans it while you sleep. And so if you aren't getting sleep, you're not getting that function. And so it can leave you feeling very bogged down mentally. Chronic lack of sleep can lead to serious health conditions like heart disease, obesity, diabetes, and just negatively impact your overall mental health. Okay. So I know sometimes people feel like, well, taking a nap is a luxury, right? Okay, but it's a luxury well deserved. Okay. If you want to call it a luxury, not a necessity, that's fine. But you're a human being, right? We need to recharge. And it's interesting how many times I see people plug their phone in to charge that, but then won't plug themselves in to charge. Okay? So find your way to charge yourself. Okay, sleep when you can. Even if it's just a 10-15 minute cat nap here and here and there, it'll do you some good. More on our physical wellness. So limiting alcohol, tobacco, and other drugs. Okay, I'm not telling you that you can't partake. Okay, but we want to do so in moderation. Okay, if you choose to drink alcohol, limit your intake to 1 drink or less per day for women and 2 drinks or less per day for men. And the only reason there's a difference there is because of the weight, right? And more often, female bodies are smaller than male bodies. But I think use your own discretion, right? Um, if you can quit smoking, which I believe in you, I know you can, but if you choose to quit smoking, that's probably your best bet. But if you are in a space where that's not something that you can handle right now, try to minimize it as much as you can, okay? Or get the gum, get the patch, do something, okay? And then reach out to health professionals or support groups to help with the quitting process, right? It's very difficult to do that. But it is very beneficial to quit smoking. I know my mother smoked for 40 years and she was able to quit. It took her a couple tries, but she was diligent and dedicated, and she finally was able to make it happen for her. Stay hydrated, okay? Drink water if you can, okay? I only drink water and coffee usually most of the time. Um, Juices and all that stuff, they're not terrible for you, but they do contain a lot of sugar and dye that you might not want in your body. So water is usually the best choice. And you can use little drops and things like that to flavor it if you don't like plain water. Remember that your needs can vary based on your physical activity level, your age, and other factors. Okay, so what is going to be refreshing and contributing to your wellness for one person may be absolute hell for another person. So be mindful of that. Try to make a habit to carry a water bottle with you wherever you go, especially as the temperatures start to climb here in May and into June. And then preventative medicine. So discuss that with your doctor, okay, or other medical health provider. If you have a history of certain diseases, right, certain things developing, heart disease, diabetes, hypertension, talk to your doctor. How can I prevent this, right? Is there a genetic component? Maybe, but what lifestyle choices can I make to kind of offset that? Proactive engagement with your health is far better than reactive healthcare. So it's like the preventative before kind of like where you keep up on your maintenance with your car, right? You keep your tires rotated, you keep your oil clean, all the things, so to prevent wear and tear, right? Our bodies are the same way. And then regular health checkups, they are key to preventing diseases and catching potential issues early, okay? So if you have a history of, say, colon cancer or breast cancer, get those screens, because if they catch it early, your chances are a lot better than if you just ignore it and let it continue to grow in your body, okay? Right, so that's all 7 dimensions. I hope you learned something, but more importantly, I hope you were inspired to discover a little bit more about yourself and how you can care for yourself a little bit more consistently. So I'm going to stop the recording.